So yeah, Declan Soden, I'm CEO of Mirai Medical. We're an Irish-based medical device company, and our mission is to enable an outpatient treatment for patients with GI, gastrointestinal cancers, both malignant and pre-malignant. So talking straight away to the clinical need, as you're all aware, there has been huge advances in screening over the last 20 years or so, which is really, really important. And when you look at what's been screened for in colorectal cancer, what starts out as a polyp becomes a complex polyp, which eventually then becomes a stage 1 colorectal cancer. So in the US, about 7% or so of patients undergoing colorectal screening will have what's called a complex polyp. This is based on its size and its location within the bowel. And so we're not talking about kind of just a simple polyp that can be removed easily, which occurs in about 50% of patients undergoing a screening. This is about the 7% or so that have a larger polyp. And it affects about 1 million or so patients in the US market alone annually. And the big number really is the fact that about half of those patients end up having surgery. So they have part of their bowel removed for benign disease. And that purely reflects the fact that the currently available options in terms of surgery are endoscopic surgery. The endoscopic approaches, the less invasive approaches, are quite time-consuming, require a lot of training for the physician to carefully remove these complex polyps from the patient. So Mirai Medical's solution, what we've developed, is a technology called ePORE therapy. Some of you will be familiar with what's called pulse field ablation or electroporation, very targeted energy system that is working towards replacing or being offered as a choice over the older kind of thermal ablation approaches, radiofrequency ablation, and so on. So pulse field ablation, electroporation, which is delivered with our ePORE generator, doesn't destroy the extracellular matrix that holds the tissue structures together. And basically, we can deliver treatment in a matter of minutes. We enable any endoscopist to be able to treat the patient on an outpatient basis. The training for the physician is relatively low bar, so it can be done on-site with them in a matter of hours, so they can be up and running using the technology very, very quickly. So there's significant cost savings for the hospital and for the patient in terms of this is an outpatient procedure, so they can go home within a few hours of the procedure being completed. So talking about pulse field ablation and electroporation and its benefits over kind of the older thermal ablation approaches, essentially the fact that the tissue structure isn't being destroyed. So this scaffolding that holds the tissue structure together remains intact. You get tissue regeneration occurring in the days and weeks after a procedure. So you get elimination of the pre-malignant disease. You also get quite favorable immunological factors occurring, but that's a story for another talk. But it offers very significant benefits in terms of the energy can be applied without causing catastrophic destruction. So that means the treatment can be delivered faster, easier, and most importantly, safely for the patient. We have experience with our system, which is CE approved since 2019. We've completed 5 clinical studies. These have been patients primarily with later stage. So we've started in our clinical experience with the technology, which is new. No one else has done this. So the 250 or so patients that have been treated have primarily been kind of later stage disease. And this is just an example. And it's a bit of a, maybe not the sort of image you want to see first thing in the morning. I appreciate that. But this is a patient with later stage colorectal cancer, a fragile patient unsuited for surgery. You see the Indovi device, which transmits the energy here on the left-hand side. So the 2 images here on the left are the pre-treatment images. So you've got a complete blockage of the bowel, which means the patient can't pass a bowel movement. The physician delivered the energy. The whole procedure was done inside 30 minutes, less. And then the 6-week follow-up, you can see excellent regression of that tumor down to a lesion in the size of about 3 centimeters, which was followed up and retreated in a process that took about 5 minutes. And the actual follow-up on that patient is due next month. So when we look at the commercial opportunity for treating complex polyps, just looking specifically in the US and EU markets, the recurrent market is about $500 million a year. So these are patients who have had ePORE primarily, and there's recurrent disease, which affects about 20% or so of all patients. The SAM affects about 2.6 million patients a year and is a market size of about 5 billion. And then looking forward into the future in terms of treating all patients that presents with kind of pre-malignant disease over 5 millimeters in size, assuming there's advances in screening in terms of screening earlier and earlier, because more and more patients at a younger age, under the age of 50, are presenting with advanced colorectal cancer. So that's a trend, unfortunately, that's happening, and we see a trend towards earlier screening and advances as well, which have been fantastic in terms of the detection of these complex polyps or pre-malignant disease. And the TAM works out at a market size of over 13 billion coming over the next 10 years or so, obviously with supporting clinical evidence for the use of our technology, which is what we're doing our Series A raise to do at the moment. Again, just looking in contrast in terms of the other options, the competitors as such in this space. So ePORE, endoscopic mucosal resection, ESD, which is a more thorough treatment, which kind of goes deeper into the tissue, and obviously surgery. In the case of surgery, you remove it, it's gone, but it comes with risk associated to the patient, impact on their overall quality of life, requires a high skill set. So any of these procedures, whether it be ePORE, endoscopic surgery, or surgery, requires a lot of training and skill from the physician. And in contrast, our solution is essentially something that any endoscopist can deliver to their patient in a matter of minutes. And our long-term goal is that this is a technology that can be delivered at the point of care, at the time of diagnosis, that the patient can have their suspect lesion treated immediately. From an IP portfolio, obviously as a medical device company, that's hugely important. Our IP portfolio is built around 3 elements. The generator, the ePORE generator, which has been patent granted in the US in the last couple of weeks. It's patent granted in Europe as well. Our first generation catheter is granted in Europe, the US, and Japan, and we have additional catheters which are made of nitinol and expand and make it easier for the endoscopist to deliver the energy. They're in development right now. We also have some IP in relation to the kind of pulse parameters that are utilized. Moving briefly, because I know I have 9 minutes here, but technology roadmap, obviously our focus as a business is on pre-malignant colorectal cancer. We're trying to do something similar to what Barratt's have done for Barrett's esophagus with RFA over 10 years ago for the lower GI space. But Barrett's esophagus itself is certainly a market opportunity, and there's multiple additional indications within the GI space that can be treated with pulse field ablation using our platform technology. We have a great team, 20 staff, brought to market the platform system, the generator, and the devices. Since 2019, we're on the market in Australia, about to be on the market in India, going for 510K next year, so planning to be on the market in the US in 2025. And we have some fantastic clinical collaborators in the US who are working with us to help us to achieve that. We're working with the Mayo Clinic with Dr. Wonky Song and Dr. Rajan, at the Memorial Sloan Kettering with Dr. Shatner as well, who's our clinical advisor. And in the UK with Mr. Hadji, who's one of the leading ePORE colorectal surgeons in the UK. He kind of sees a vast number of patients annually. So we've achieved a lot on a very low amount of capital raised, just 7 million to date. And we've been able to bring our products to market, treat these patients, complete 5 clinical studies, develop our patent portfolio, and we have very good gross margin on the products themselves. And then finally, the reason why we're here this week for Mirai Medical's Series A raise of $23 million. That's going to see us through to 2026 and into 2027. It will see us through FDA approval, initial clinical evaluation and building clinical evidence at key sites in the US. It'll bring our new products through into the market as well and begin the initial commercial rollout towards the end of 2026. So we're delighted to be here. Thank you to everybody at LSI for a wonderful event here in Barcelona, and delighted to follow up. We have a booth up by the meeting room. Very happy if you'd like to call by and ask any additional questions later on today. Thank you very much.